your
Hello.
related to our appointment meeting today. And together in the meeting we have my supervisor, Shahid Moham, which he going to as well ask you some question about your background and about your experiences. So I would like to introduce you to my supervisor. So Shahid Kadi is a mother of a 3-year-old boy which suffer with chronic kidney disease stage 5, and she was diagnosed with that the baby is going to have some disease during her 20 week of pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And Oliver has some surgeries during his life, and I hope Kat going to tell us more about that. And now he's waiting for transplantation. So Kat, could you tell us more about the background, about your role, how you helping your kid, your child, and help us and tell all the story from beginning how this was.
It's a long story.
I know, I can't believe it's already 3 years, and you told me that he passed for many surgeries. So I can believe it's a long and hard story.
So, to start from the beginning, we found out. I'll try and make it quick. We found out on my 21-week scan that there was a glow in his kidney. We went for this appointment with the doctors. They sent us to specialists over at the Women's Birmingham Hospital, and they just basically said that there was, there's something there. They can't exactly tell us what it is, but he hasn't. It's really hard. Sorry.
I understand.
That he isn't going to have much life, and even if he did survive this, it's going to be in and out of hospital. But the likelihood of him surviving was so slim. So they were pushing for us to have an abortion, which obviously that wasn't going to happen. That's not going to happen. Mm. So we pushed forward, and they watched us, they monitored us. They found that my amniotic fluid was getting like low to a point that I had zilch. Then they wanted me to push. They were indecisive of whether to have him early or to let him develop more, because the whole growing stage, he wasn't growing well, his lungs weren't growing. So we had all that in the pipeline, and then it got to the point where they were like, right, we are going to deliver him, but we're going to deliver him at 39 weeks, which is then classed as full term. Absolutely fine. We went in for the selective C-section. That all went well until he was obviously born. He did the normal, he peed, he pooped, he cried. Within 5 minutes, he declined. He was rushed off to the ICU. I literally saw him for seconds. I didn't even get to hold him or anything. Mm-hmm. So he was then rushed off. I was still obviously I couldn't move. Like, I was paralyzed from, my waist down. So I couldn't even go and see him. 6 hours, I then saw him. And he was hooked up to machines, tubes. It was horrible because it's my first, so this shouldn't be happening for my first. Then it got. We then found out both of his lungs collapsed, so he had a double pneumothorax. So we had tubes put into his chest to drain all the fluid out. And they did all that. 12 days later, during the whole 12 days, he's been on like oscillator, he was on nitrogen, he was on you name it, he was on it. 12 days later, we finally got a hold. They finally woke him up because he was induced coma, and he was still at the women's ICU. We then, after he got woken up, we moved to the children's hospital. Within a month, we got to go home because he was doing so fine. He survived. It was, you know, it was like, you know, nothing, I can't explain it. It was like he was here, you know. We were going through the process of, we found out that he was end stage, he was renal. He will need dialysis at some point, not right now. But then we got to go home, everything was fine. He stopped feeding, he stopped eating.
Right.
And they did NG tube, so he was feeding through pumping and that. And they found that he just wasn't doing everything on his own. Sorry, my throat's gone dry. They've, after 5 months, they realised that, you know, he needs to be on dialysis. So at 5 months old, he had a hemocath put in, and he had a G tube put in as well, to help with the feeding, because the NG, he was just pulling it out constantly. So let's get a drink.
Okay.
So after 5 months, he was doing really well. He was surviving. He was, oh, I can't explain it. He was this happy little boy. He was such a good little boy. Like, everything he took on his stride. And the first year, it was great. So his first year. Coming to his second year of his life, things started to get a bit, should we say, hectic. He was in and out of hospital. He was always ill. He was always, something was always wrong. And then they found it was obviously to do with his kidneys. His lungs still hadn't fully developed. So he was getting a lot of pneumonias. He was getting really ill all the time. Come to about, it must have been, we nearly lost him, not last year, the year before, Christmas Day. He was so critical, so poorly. He ended up with a virus that it's known, but it's so rare, and it's called BOCA.
Right.
But he ended up with this really random virus. He was put out for about 2 weeks. And this was during Christmas. We didn't even have our Christmas. I think it was until the 12th of January.
Oh,
so
wow.
when we come home, you know, we were like, or 30, something like around about that date, and you know, we finally got Christmas. Our first proper Christmas was his third year, but he's been on dialysis ever since. He's had multiple hemocaths in, like multiple. They just don't seem to. So I don't know if you know about the hemocath. Yeah. Obviously you do. Basically, it doesn't. It's really hard to explain. Like it stops working.
Yeah.
It falls out. It drops. It just doesn't. It's like right now. This is the issue we're now having. Is his potassium is so high. We
Right.
never had to fight with potassium. We never had to have issues with all of this. You know, he was able to drink. He was able to eat. He was, you know, all these little things.
Yeah.
Now we have an issue with potassium, and he's fluid restricted. He had a mitroph put in a year ago, because we're working up to the transplant. They found that his bladder is high pressured, and that he needed to have this operation where his bladder's made bigger and this mitroph put in. During all of that, which I was not aware of, he had a kidney taken out of.
Right.
Since kidney was taken out, we have had these issues of fluid restriction, potassium issues, phosphate, all of these silly little things that we never had issues with. And like even today, he's literally just got back from dialysis. My partner's had to take a massive suitcase with him because we just don't know if he needs to be, you know, in hospital for a while because of his potassium levels. We're fighting, like, you know, we've restricted his eating, like what he eats, so much, but it's really difficult when it's food he loves. Like, he loves his fish, and there's certain foods he can't have. Hello. So yeah, that's the gist of it. My partner's worked up for giving him a transplant, giving him his kidney.
Okay.
So that's news, that's in the pipeline, which I think we're all excited about, because there are no more hospitals.
Yeah.
Well, not as no more, but there's
Less.
3 times way
Yeah.
less, yeah. Way less. So yeah, that I don't know what more to say. That's like as quick as I can put it in.
Yeah. No, that's really fascinating story and backstory really to how he was diagnosed. And you say obviously he's on dialysis at the moment. Hello.
Hello.
I need a surprise.
You need a surprise, yeah. Mummy's just talking. I'm gonna go upstairs. Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I want a surprise.
Sorry.
So that's okay. So he was on dialysis at the moment, and is
Yeah.
it because of the COVID and COVID-19, and that's caused a bit of delay in the processes of things?
Not really. Like with the transplant, yes.
Yeah.
Because back before like all this all started a year ago, the issues with the COVID, when that one started, my partner had just gone and had like all the tests
Yeah.
in one week, because we were hoping for him to have it that November
Yeah.
that year, and then because of the whole COVID-19, it pushed it back, and then my partner's had to go for more assessments, and like he's got his last appointment on the 30th, but this to us it's kind of like this could have got sorted sooner.
Yeah. Yeah.
COVID-19, our
Yeah.
best friend.
So you see, there've been lots of have there been quite a few further tests and investigations then to follow up for before transplantation and things like that?
Yeah, so basically they said if it takes so long, like if it takes more than 6 months, they have to redo certain tests because like the blood changes or something.
Yeah.
And it's kind of disheartening because it's kind of like we're pushing to have this done.
Yeah.
Like yeah, we've got to redo, so he's had to redo some tests. Like his last one is his kidney function. What are you doing?
I'm in Mama's room.
You're gonna go play? You're gonna go downstairs? Okay. So that's my boy.
Seems very resilient. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's good because at the minute we're kind of going through a process of autism.
Oh yeah.
School's picked up on a lot of stuff.
Oh right. Okay.
So they're like, right, so we're having to go through that now. So that on top of this, on top of everything else,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And do you know what? We get so many family friends that say to us, that it's like some of them have even said like they're inspired, and it's like you do what you do because they're your child. I've had parents out, oh, I could never do what you do, and it's like, well, you do, you find it, you know, us, Oliver being our first child and having to go through all of this plus whatever on top.
Yeah.
At first, you are broken, your heart, I was a mess right at the beginning of all of this. To now, it's kind of like we just get on with it, because if we're not here for him, who's going to do that?
Yeah.
Who's going to do that? Yeah. And hey, I'm on the phone. Come on. No, I'll tell you what. Sorry, 1 second.
Okay.
You just, like I say, you find it in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was also interested in like for example, you said, you know, it's like it inherently has some, like you as well, I would think you have that that inner sort of resilience that, you know, just comes out, you know, when it need, you know, when going through such adversity, and you're just loads of things just coming on top of you, and then basically finding that inner part of you that just basically needs to like literally come out and take over, so that the things don't collapse. And I wanted to kind of ask, did you get any additional sort of support from the renal team, and not just the renal team, but because renal disease as it is, it kind of it has an effect on other parts of your well-being and things. So did you get like support, or did you feel supported by the renal team and, you know, the wider, you know, healthcare professionals, for example, where the care is?
So with the hospital itself, you know, they let you, you know, take the 5 minutes you need. They would happily, you know, if you need to go and have that cry, because, you know, crying in front of your child is, you know, you try not to show that you feel like that's a weakness. So
Right.
will look after your child, they will watch your little one, you know, if you need to go and take that 5 minutes. Professionally help, I did have to go doctors and get that personally.
Right.
The hospital did provide a psychiatrist, but it was only mainly to talk about, obviously, Oliver, anything that I didn't understand, that from their point of view they could try and help. You know, if I wasn't happy with how doctors or nurses were doing something, or I couldn't understand why they were doing it that way, why, you know, why do they, just those sort of questions, this person would be there to help. And it did help for a little while, but when you're kind of in that zone of, I'm one of these, like, I can talk for England, I'll happily talk for England, but then it gets to a certain point and I'm like, I'm just going around in circles.
Right, yeah, of course.
Like anything's being done, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd rather see stuff being done than continuously talking about it, you know? And that's all it kind of, the support you kind of got from them. And you just kind of had to deal with stuff on your own, especially when you're at home. It was, you know, I live about an hour away from the hospital, so taking him to our nearest hospital was a no-no for me, because our hospital had no clue about Oliver's disease. They, you know, like the whole, he had that day they were like, oh, he's just got a cold, but then it turned out to be pneumonia. You know, so it's kind of like that when you build a history, especially with hospital and nurses, and you're like, oh, you get sent to like your normal closest one. It's kind of like, I've had arguments with ambulance paramedics and been like, he's got to go to Birmingham. Because they know him better. I can give him a passport and go, this is wrong with Oliver, and this, that, and the other. And I can't. It's a hard one, because then, especially when the hospitals have to talk between each other. You know, Oliver was put in a hospital for a week, you know, and they had to talk between consultants. I was then ringing Birmingham Hospital being like, they're doing this, and I know it's not supposed to be like that. And it's just easier if you're there, you know. It's, but they have tried, they do try. But for me, it's when you're so far away, I think they just kind of leave you to it, to find your own feet. And that is how I feel. That is how I feel. You know, you can ring them, they're on the end of the phone. But, you know, and it's silly things, and they're like, I'll just bring him into hospital. And it's like, well, he doesn't need to come into hospital for such a silly little thing, you know. I don't want to take up a bed space, because they are limited, you know. This children's hospital is limited, especially his ward. And I don't want to just take up a bed space for them to go, oh yeah, he's fine, and then send him on his way. It's like, you know, it's not, I don't know. That's my mentality of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Camilla, what did you want to ask Kat some things as well?
I have one question. So, is there any way, like, how you try to explain Oliver that he has some disease or something, or you don't do it?
What do you mean?
Is Oliver aware that why he is going to hospital, why he is having these diseases?
Yeah, so he knows he has to go to dialysis. We do try and explain to him that, you know, he has got a kidney disease. You know, you ask him, if he was here, you were to ask him, oh, what are you getting from daddy? He will tell you, I'm getting a new kidney, and the first thing I'm doing is jumping on a trampoline. You know, it's the little things.
Yeah.
So he is kind of aware, but I don't think, because he's 4 in next month, so I think he doesn't quite understand why. He does fight with the nurses. He will physically say, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to hospital. You know.
Yeah.
So you can tell it's taken its toll, but when he's there, the nurses love him. He loves the nurses, you know. So he'll run around like a headless. He runs around like a headless chicken. It's crazy. He'll go in. He's like, "Hi, everybody!" He's all excited. He has a routine of how he does things, you know, from washing his hands, doing his weight, doing his line, you know. But we don't say that he's just going to the hospital. He's going to hospital to work. His lines are going to work because mommy works. So he's like, "Well, I'm going to work." It's like, yeah, you're going to work because you're going to have your lines done. So he kind of finds a way of being able to deal with actually going to the hospital as well. So that's yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I wanted to actually follow up on that, because I suppose it all comes down to how the environment that he kind of, what sounds to me like he's grown up in, and basically in and out of hospital, you know, quite frequently. And so it's almost become, you know, self-aware about that, you know, that environment, but also even, you said he's only 4 years old, and even for someone to go through something, you know, so well, really quite traumatic actually at such a young age, it's I would think that as he gets older, he become, you know, more even more resilient than he is, or, you know, at the moment, to then hopefully get a good understanding of you know, what who to approach, and, you know, when to approach, I suppose. But I wanted to also ask, I mean, he's still very young, and do they in the hospital, in as part of his care, do you envisage questions that you might ask about him transitioning to adults? You know, I mean, that won't be for a while, obviously, he's still very young, but when he goes into, as he grows up and goes into adult, from pediatrics to adults, is that something that you have you know, you kind of have in your back of your mind, or you have things to think about around that as well?
So I have actually spoken to the consultants and that about, you know, future, and what does the future hold for Oliver? What is it?
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously they all just talked about the transplant. You know, Oliver doesn't have much of a future on dialysis.
Right.
His hemocath, he is on his last lifeline.
Right.
So this transplant is his lifeline right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So anything future-wise, you know, I think we're hoping he just looks after his kidney. We have no issues, but obviously it's a hard one. You just don't know. But the transition, and they have said obviously they transition from the pediatric to the Queen Elizabeth at 18.
Okay.
And that there is they do it. They start at 16 and work up to when they're actually 18. It takes a couple of years apparently to do.
Yeah,
the full
yeah, it does take, yeah.
transition. So my questions have been asked, but it's like they said, like I try not to worry about those things,
Yeah,
because it's not here.
yeah,
So,
I understand.
You know, me and my partner, we used to all the time, like, literally all the time, we'd have plans to do this, that, and the other, whatever we wanted to do.
Yeah,
Now it's kind of like we have to take things as a day-to-day basis,
yeah,
because we don't know what's going to happen. You know, we could plan something for like 2-3 months from here, but Oliver could just turn ill, you know,
yeah,
or we can't do something because of whatever reason, but it always is because of Oliver.
yeah.
But again, it's not his fault, it's because of his condition. It's a hard one. Cheers.
Yeah. So no, that's very important. I mean, and like it's still early stages, you know, it's early duration, but that's very important to get that understanding now, I guess, in some ways. But other question, I mean, this month is World Kidney Month, and World Kidney Day, you know, in March, and I wanted to kind of ask myself, I've questioned myself as well as, you know, others, and I've said, you know, what would be your message really around World Kidney Day, and more around pediatrics or young people, because obviously adults have kind of have a premise around this condition because of the general population, and when they think about long-term conditions, we think about, you know, the older population. So I kind of wanted to get a perspective from you know, some parents or guardians as well, who are looking after, you know, children and young people with the disease, and what would your sort of you know, understand, well, your message be for, you know, people around that, because it's the theme this year is about living well with kidney disease. So living well means, you know, lots of different things to different people. So it'd be good to get your thoughts on that.
Mine would be, don't be scared. Don't be scared to do what you want to do. As a family, if you know that tomorrow is ever going to be your last day, live it like it will be. That is what we try and do. You know, that is the best thing you can do, is do what you want to do with your family when you want to do it, because if you don't, to me, it's going to be the biggest regret you're going to have. Family is so important. My little boy, to me, is so important. He gets, I don't care if he's spoiled, spoil him, because that, you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to hold. You don't know what the future is. You don't know we just don't know. So live it, live what you can. Because otherwise, what's the point?
Exactly.
What would be the point? So my message would be just to live, enjoy life, be with the people you really want to be with. That's my main message.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Kat. Thank you. Anything else, Kat, from Camilla? Anything from you on that?
I think was said a lot. I think I don't have any question for Kat. I think you are an amazing person, and your final words, live like tomorrow not gonna happen, is the best motto. And
just don't know.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. Bye.